My name is Mary Louise Ashbourne, and I've lived all my life in a little community called Weston, which of course is now part of Toronto. But I married Howard Ashbourne. We met at Kodak. We were both working as summer students at Kodak, and so that we were both at U of T. And he was a soccer player because, of course, they played soccer down in Newfoundland. And I became a groupie. And anyway, we married in 55, and my husband set up, after graduating from law school, Osgoode Hall, he set up practice in Weston, and was first with my uncle and then on his own at the corner of Lawrence and Weston Road. Well, I had never met a Newfoundlander before I met my husband. Then I discovered Toronto was full of Newfoundlanders. Anyway, my husband practiced law, and I learned a lot about Newfoundland, a lot as well as being his wife. He had grown up in a little fishing, it was more than a fishing village because it had the hospital, the town of Twillingate. And this is on the northeast coast, an island off the northeast coast of Newfoundland. And his background was family background were merchants. They had originally had been sending ships off to the Labrador. His grandfather had a great entrepreneur, sent ships to the Labrador for fishing in the summer, sealing in the winter, and he ran a large general store. And this was quite successful, except one of the hazards of being a merchant with fishing ships and sealing ships is that there was a high attrition with bad storms, very high risk. And there were stories about the ships that being washed up on the rocky shore right in Twillingate Harbor. Even if you had your ship secured, the storms were very, very, very hard. So the family affairs went up and down, but nevertheless they were a force in the community of Twillingate because they were very important. Well, of course, you have to know that there was sealing was one of the industries that the ships were sent in the wintertime. And there are many stories of terrible tragedies of people being lost, men being lost in the storms and things like that. They had to go, I think, in March maybe, but that was when they had the seals and the seal pups. And they had to go in what would be a bit treacherous weather. Some of it not bad, some of it very bad. And so but the sealing was one of their industries. In the summertime, no problem, it was fishing. Of course, they always had to cope with the storms and the weather, the uncertain weather of the North Atlantic. But then to support that, fishing, they had they brought the fish in to be looked after. They could do that, but the sealing required special rendering in a big vats to put the seal fat into and to be rendered down. And I'm sure it was a bit of a bad owner. They were doing things like this. So it may not have been too popular in the town, but it was very essential. It was a part of their industry and their living. And of course, the seal oil was very important for in early years for light, as a matter of fact, as they used it for light. But gradually over the years, when the sealing died out, then the plant fell into disuse and disrepair. And a generation coming along that had never been part of the sealing industry didn't have too much respect for the buildings, and so they eventually were torn down. My husband felt that was a mistake because he said, the sealing was a part of Newfoundland and a part of Twillingate's history. Now, the fishing, of course, fishing kept on. But during the Depression years, of course, everything went down, and everything was very close to the bone. There's the shop, as they called it, which was the general store, and there was then the office. There were two buildings that were there, and then there's what they call the longhouse, and this was the family home, and it is actually a heritage structure and has been declared as such. It's very old. It dates probably from the 1790s, the old house, because it was the one that was originally with the family business that was bought from Mr. Duder, and the Ashbourne grandfather, William Ashbourne, had bought it, and then Howard's father was raised in it, and the house is still there. But It's an old house and it needs care. It is historic. Well, it is indeed a tourist place, and it is one of its reasons it has survived and done as well as it has is it has the hospital, and you could always get to the hospital. If inland is a little more problematic, I guess you'd have to go to Gander, for the outports, you could get to by boat. You could get to Twillingate Island, but the hospital was a real hospital, small, and it was an outport hospital, but it nevertheless was a very important center for everybody that had ailments.